Welcome to the Uplift, where we are uplifting our lives, uplifting each other, and uplifting our communities together. Thank you for joining myself, Cy Herrera, and Tessa Cy here, two women, two attorneys, doing it our way, and inviting you here each week to share in on the stories, advice, and life lessons we've picked up along our journeys that keep us uplifted, and that will hopefully do the very same thing for you. Now buckle in and let's get ready to be uplifted.
Hello, everyone. As always, I am Tessa, and I am joined by the lovely and accomplished and amazing Cy.
Hello. Hi, Tessa. How are you?
I am well. It has been, as always, quite a week in the world with horrible earthquakes in Turkey and the usual news in the United States that catches my attention a lot, and I think catches yours as well. I think most of our listeners too. And there were these kind of uproarious moments on national news shows concerning Nikki Haley's announcement that she is intending to run for president as a Republican in 2024, which was met on cast as one was she was too old or past her prime. She is 51, let's note.
Oh, wow.
And,
Wow.
and how old have our male presidents been? So much older.
All of the
right?
candidates, actually. Yeah.
Right? Like so much older. And then another
Wow.
news station, said the usual thing that I would boil down to: a woman's place is in the home, cooking, cleaning, reproducing, breeding, right? Like, serve as my maid in my science experiment, and that's about it. But
And this is 2023, just as a reminder.
I know, and it's just like frustrating. But I read this poem
Absolutely.
on Instagram this morning, which talked about this and then countered all the like bad. I don't know. Should we label it bad? Demeaning,
Mhm.
minimizing, limiting, making women feel inferior because the people who say it I think believe that women are inferior,
Yeah,
right?
male
Like,
supremacy. Yeah,
yeah,
talking
you know,
points.
the classic example I received as a lawyer licensed in 2 states was from a Texas lawyer who said, "You possibly could not understand, little lady." And I think that kind of epitomizes the thing, the whole
Oh,
gist
wow.
of everything. And we hear about all those things, and they
Mm-hmm.
happen. There's no doubt in
Yep.
the world it happens. They've happened to
Yeah.
me, they've happened to you, they've happened to
Mm-hmm.
people we know.
Yep.
And it is important that we talk about them, but at the same time, I feel like we don't talk about the good guys out there and the good women, like the women
Mm-hmm.
who uplift women, the men who uplift women, the
Mm-hmm.
cis men who uplift gay men, how whatever the combination is, just
Mm-hmm.
people uplifting each other. We don't
Mm-hmm.
hear about it. Like, you really have to
True.
seek it out.
Right. Yeah. And even if you did, it's not a news story.
No. And so is it all
So
about capitalism? Right? Like, I mean,
there's no news.
I
People
assume
being nice
news,
to each other.
and does the news only take that position because it breeds ads, right? Like,
Yeah.
all
What
those
sells?
all those court
Yeah.
documents that came out last week about Fox News and the election, and how all these big names on Fox News behind the scenes, as revealed by these court documents, were like, we don't believe that there was an election fraud, but they also said we have to support our subscriber, our
Mm.
followers, or
We
our
have to support our
listeners, the viewers.
subscribe. What?
Yeah. And so we have to like publicly take this position.
They
Just like,
oh my gosh, just don't call yourself a news company. That's the thing. Like, that's the thing is like that's not news then. I don't understand.
or am I so cynical that it is all about making money?
Oh
Right?
no, it
Like,
is. I don't even think it's a question for me. I'm just like, yeah, obviously, like everything else.
And
I
I don't
mean, the
want to
people are
be,
not in the news business to, lift and inspire others. It's not what they're doing.
I don't even think they're in the news business to present news.
Mm-mm. Clearly not from that last example. Like literally, there is no news business anymore. There's not a news business. It's not that. It's something else. Something else. Something has gone terribly wrong.
Right, and whether it's ads or how many clicks people get on
Hmm.
social media because they say bad things about women or people of
Mm.
color or homophobic
Or
statements,
just fear-based
just
bait,
fear.
clickbait. Hmm.
Yeah, and I
Hmm.
mean, are they, pardon my expression, are they getting off on it by saying it? And do
Mm.
we
Yeah.
give into it by clicking to see how horrible they are? Is it like rubbernecking, but
Yeah.
social media
Oh yeah.
rubbernecking?
Oh yeah. We're so chismosos. Human beings love it. They love it. It's hard. It's just, it's human nature. That's why I say human beings and not any one grouping of human beings. It's just,
Yeah.
I mean, gossip has been around since the beginning of time. It's juicy. People want to know what's up. They want to know what's going on in other people's lives. And, it's just not, I mean, is that news? I mean, they should call it gossip channels, maybe. That's
Right?
that could make it more accurate. I don't know, but I do think it's I mean, whether or not to your question, people are getting off on it, I mean, is irrelevant. What they're doing is they're finding things that get other people off, right?
Mhm.
And charging and getting money for that basically.
Yeah.
So that's it. Like it doesn't matter whether or not they actually enjoy it themselves. That's almost irrelevant. Like the damage that they're doing still happens.
Does that mean there's no money in being a good person and uplifting people? I love
No, I don't think that's true.
telling good
There is,
stories. Oh,
there is. I
good,
mean, look at
good.
Oprah. Look at
Ah,
look at the people doing amazing inspirational work. I just read a book with Tony Robbins. Like I feel like it's out there. You just have to want it, not just want it, but I mean, it's one of those things where you have to be really conscious of it, right? Because like I always tell my sister, you either like build the world you want around you or you let the world push you around into the life they want for you.
I
And
love
it's the same
that.
thing. It's the same thing. Like if you want to be surrounded by positive, uplifting messaging and inspirational, wisdom and just motivation. I mean, those words are even, I feel like they're not even good enough to describe what we're trying to talk about. But it's,
Yeah.
if you want to be surrounded by positivity and you want to lift up your well-being and enlightenment, then you have to surround yourself with that
Mhm.
energy, period. And if you don't, the stuff that's floating out around there, that's gonna get you, it's not good, and it's going to be serving someone else's agenda and someone else's architecture for your life.
See, I love the way you phrase it like that, that it's serving somebody else and not yourself. And
Mhm.
how I think even I'm guilty of it, not conveying and relaying the positive stories that I hear, right?
Mm.
When, you know,
Mhm.
someone helped someone else get a job or get a client or
Yeah.
help them out of a hard situation. And it
Mm.
was not the kind of normal pairing that you would think. We're not telling those stories. So we're not telling the stories about how, at least not to a broad enough audience, I don't think, of that
No,
kind of
yeah,
uplifting and supportive community that is out there. And
yeah.
I don't think they're necessarily hiding. I think it's exactly what you said, that like all the juicy bits are in the gossip.
Mhm, mhm. Well, even I don't know, even with, like, things like mutual aid, I feel like, where's the publicity for that? Where's the
Mhm.
education, the public education about it? I mean, I think it's an incredible thing that I'm still learning about, and it's something that I am thirsty for, I'm like, and I'm sure I could find more and more if I searched and searched, but it's strange to me that, like, there's so many other negative things out there that are just common knowledge. You know what I mean? Like all of the things that
Mhm.
you just talked about, everybody knows about those things. But what is a good, positive, uplifting story that everybody knows about this week?
Exactly. And I also, I think there's a lot of people who would say, well, to oversimplify this, the good
Mhm.
men need to correct the bad men. But
Mm.
is it? just upon the men, or is it everybody who should just start
Mm-hmm.
uplifting positive things? And I don't even know if it's about correction. I kind of think it more like
Mm-mm.
positive reinforcement, like
Yep.
talk about
Yep.
and praise the good people so that you like
Yeah.
reward that behavior.
It's about who you're putting the spotlight on. Like, who are you
Yeah.
passing the mic to? And we are, again, like, it's for me, there's when I think about things, I think about them visually sometimes, and I think about it's like when you're in a room and it's a finite amount of space that you can fill it up with different things. You can only fill it up with so many people. You can only fill it with so much sound, right? If you have a lot of like different sounds combating each other, like that wouldn't work. Like imagine you're in a concert and you have like 10 different bands playing at the same time. Like it's not gonna work. So it's like you have to clear the clutter and you have to focus your attention and you have to put the people around you closest to you that you really want to be, I mean, influenced by, that you want to be inspired by, that you want to feed off of and take on some of their energy. And so I think you're right. People oftentimes, I mean, first of all, again, the focus is on the bad actors. I think that's the
Hmm.
problem. So when you're putting the
Yeah.
spotlight on the bad actors, then it's like, well, who's going to fix this person, or how are we going to fix it, or what's how are we going to solve this? Which human beings are also incredible problem solvers. We love, like, I mean, some people just, that's all they're about. They want to solve problems. So it's like you see a problem, you want to solve it, right? Um, but you're right. I mean, it goes to the detriment of all of the positive things that are happening, all the allyships or friendships or relationships that are good and positive and healthy. And if nothing else, I've learned that when all there is negativity, or all there is abuse, or all there is poor lifestyle even, it's not about only taking that stuff out, it's about replacing it with something good and something positive, right? And I think that that's kind of the same thing here, where the only way people are still going to want news, people are still going to want stories, people love
Hmm.
stories, right? People need their stories. But yeah, what are we choosing to talk about? What are we choosing to take up all of our time and our energy and our space and our minds, right? And our consciousness. And it's for me, it's like you just have to replace it with something good. And I worry that we just get so caught up in these national conversations that we just get lost on like the closer, almost more relevant
Yeah.
things, or the smaller stories, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
like we're talking about a candidate that might run for president, and it's good. I mean, I just it's I just don't like, I don't know. I feel like there's also like a woman here in Austin who is like doing something right now that's incredible and is
Hmm.
making a difference. And I don't know anything about her. And I would just love
Yeah.
to know about her and know about like how she's doing that. And maybe if I want to maybe be inspired and do some of the things that she's doing, or just get to know her, or what have you. And so I find that very interesting that there's this big chasm for me between the fact that we have so much information, like an onslaught of information, maybe too much information. Well, I won't say that. I think information is good. Um, but a lot of it has to do with like these big, almost, I don't know if I want to say out of reach, but just like far things that are far away, it feels like, in time and relevance, in space to me. And I don't know. Like I've tried to watch local news even, and I'm sometimes just like, this is not good either for so
Right.
many reasons. And I think it's just because, again, it's like, news is the news. Like it's gonna be about the negative things happening, and it's almost, for me, honestly, like a little bit just it's just like a micro traumas, if that's a thing, or just like mini traumas of the day, or triggering traumas that are not so many because they harken to like these deep traumas that we have collectively experienced with news absorption. So I know I'm making it a little bit more about news, but at the same time, it's just interesting to me that the narratives that we're creating and the conversations that we have are very influenced by the news. And when we're talking about the different men in the world and what they do and who they are in our society, that narrative, that that script that we make about like who men are, what they do, what they're about, it's almost like it's coming from this very like national news place for me anyways. Is that your experience of what you're hitting
You
on?
know, I get Well, I'm going to be very cynical this this time because I
We're gonna
question
turn
whether or
it
not
around somewhere in there.
I know. Yes, I don't know that we actually have local news because
Yeah.
most of those local stations are actually owned by like
Oh, well,
national
preach. Yes.
chains, right? So,
That's right.
do
Get
we
it
truly
correct.
have local
Yeah,
news?
and they have all the same talking points throughout the country or what
Right,
have you, and it's all yeah, it's all synced up. And that's probably the part of the problem. That's what I mean. Is like I don't even know where to look, you know. Like I'm trying to think of like what I used to be more of a news junkie. I really kind of abstain a lot more lately because I really find it somewhat traumatic, just triggering and traumatic for me personally. But I used to watch an independent news organization, and they were going through my mind as we were talking about this. And I remember them always talking about, like, we're funded by the community. We don't take this money. We're not
hmm
we're not owned by these big media corporations. And I used to think that's cool. And I trusted, their content, but even with them, it's like their content was, I mean, doomsday bad. Like, I mean, it was it was very accurate, which is terrifying, but it was also, it was hard stuff to digest on a daily basis. I was like an hour-long show on a daily basis where I was like, "Oh, this is a
Oof,
lot." And
yeah,
yeah, that's so I would get into it, but now I'm like, I don't know that I want that to take up so much of my mind because it's not just that hour even, it's like the rest of the day I'm thinking about it, wanting to solve these
right.
problems that I cannot possibly impact in a day. Like it's just, a kind of setting myself up for failure, and that's not what I'm about. I'm about the
And
opposite. I like
right, I think that sticks with you, right? Like
Oh,
it's
yes.
something that
Yes.
we have talked about on
Mhm.
repeat, which is
Mhm.
selecting the type of people that make you feel good to be around.
Mm.
And
Yep.
I personally don't feel good when I hear all these stories about how
Yeah.
crappy the world is. And I do think
Yeah.
they need to be told because I think we all need to
They
know that
do.
exists.
Absolutely.
But
They
when
do.
90% of what is out there for information, and I'm
Mhm.
just making that up, I haven't done like empirical research. So
Right. Right.
just so everybody knows. But an overwhelming majority, in my opinion,
Right.
is focused on this kind of like sensational, somebody did something really bad or really wrong, and we need to talk about it. And yes, it needs to be a conversation. But at the same time, I'd also like to hear about somebody who did something really great at that same time or in the same area. Right? Like, why can't we have some sort of
Yeah.
news idea where, you know, this person was what is something was mean to puppies. I'm trying to think of something that's
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
not human related. And then this person, created an
Save the
organization
puppies.
that saved the puppies, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I don't want to use the word
Yeah.
balance because I know some of those news chains say that, but at the same time, they obviously aren't. I'm talking more like empirically balanced,
Yeah. Yeah.
like
And maybe
tit for
there's, I
tat.
mean, to be fair, maybe there is no balance. Sometimes it's just bad news and
Yeah.
nobody's doing something good, maybe. But I mean, I mean, did somebody try to find a good story, about this? Probably not. I love that challenge. Like, I would love that challenge of an anchor or investigator being like, or journalists, just thinking like, wow, this is a big story. I wonder if I can engage the community
hmm
around this. And that to me would be enough, honestly. Like for me, I would totally get into the news again, especially local news, if somebody was like, okay, this happened. This was a bad situation. And here is the community to respond who has been on the ground, who has, created community organizing, who has, charitable organizations working on this, who has advocacy organizations working on it, or what have you. And here's what they need to say. Here's a platform for them to talk about
hmm
it right now and help you understand how you could get involved if you're interested. Or like something like that for me would be like, yes, I would be interested now in like an activating moment, right? Just like having an activation where I'm thinking, okay, maybe I can do something about this instead of feeling like I'm almost being traumatized and victimized by just like a bad story that I can't do anything about. I feel helpless, I feel lost, I feel terrible, and and then I'm left to sit with those feelings with nothing, with just no consult, right? I mean, I don't know if that's the answer for everyone, but I kind of like that idea for me.
And for me, I like something like really practical. Like, I want to see that this organization has helped, you know,
Mhm.
I don't know, Sarah, whatever her last name might be, in
Mhm.
that same situation. Like, I want to know that there
Yeah.
were practical
Yeah.
people who were helped to get to a better place and were uplifted by this group.
Oh, and just speaking from a point of nonprofit leadership and work, stories are so important to our work. It's something that really can translate to all of the community, what we're really doing and how it's having impact, right? And people relate to
Hmm.
stories. And it's one of the things that nonprofits always, always, always struggle with. Always. There's so many
Really?
things, yes, because it's like you're just trying to do the work, like you're trying to save the babies, like you're just trying to keep people from drowning or whatever you're trying to do. And, getting stories is one of the last things on the list. It really is one of those things that I'm always trying to work in somehow systemically. And, if the news community, if the journalist community would support us in that, that would be amazing. That would be so amazing because they could be sharing those stories. Now, nonprofits, some do it well, but I'm telling you, the ones that are doing it really well and preparing these beautiful, stories for the news, those people usually, are far along. They've gotten together. They have a person, dedicated staff that can work on storytelling. Like it costs money to put together stories. It really does, and talent and skill and time, right? And so those are one of the things. I mean, that's just an opportunity for people who really want there to be true stories, local stories, stories of good people, good men, women, children, and everyone in between, that are doing things in the community. You could help a local nonprofit out because every local nonprofit is, impacting lives in your community, but their stories are usually going, just generally untold. there,
Do you
there might be a
think
quote or something. Yeah.
do you think people want to tell their stories on social media, or do you think there's a
Mm.
fear of telling their story because the trolls will be out to get them once they tell their story?
Oh,
Because no
well,
matter
of
what you're doing,
course.
people are going to
Yeah.
attack you. And if you tell a good
Unfortunately,
story, people are going to attack you.
the internet is not a safe place for so many people, and then the people that
Right.
are being helped, especially with nonprofits, first of all, there can be stigma in receiving help, period. There's still a terrible stigma, even though so many people, have used nonprofits, especially through the pandemic, that maybe have never used it before. Um, there's a stigma, first of all, there. So there's a lot of times hesitancy for people to share their stories publicly, period. And you have to honor that. That's another reason why it's hard to build stories in nonprofit work because somebody might want your services, but they don't want to talk about their stuff publicly. Are you kidding me? They just That's a
And
private matter, right?
I also think there's a segment of society who doesn't want to know that people are happy or that
Mm,
good things happen to them,
mm, mm.
like the Debbie Downers of the
Yeah.
world.
Oh, for sure that. But then you got to ask yourself why.
Yeah,
Why?
or the Karens. Maybe that's a better phrasing of it in modern society. I probably just dated myself with Debbie Downer. I think that's from a Saturday Night Live
I never
skits.
thought about it. It is. Oh my God, I can see her face. Oh my God, and I didn't even think about that. I'm thinking it's like, just different ways to say it. But absolutely, I think it seems as though, people, feed off the negativity like we talked about, right? But
Hmm.
and some people it's just, all the sayings go through my mind like misery loves company and stuff like that. It's just
Yeah.
it's another
Why
human
doesn't
nature
happiness
thing.
love company?
I
Like
don't
happiness
know.
should
I
love
don't
company.
know. I know. I mean, I think it can, right? Like I think like love and happiness are infectious in ways, right? Like you see someone coming in with a big smile, you tend to get a little bit happier, a little smiley, unless you're determined to be
That's true. But
to be one
even if
way.
the rare time that I'm in a bad mood and I see you, I
Mhm.
know that I'm going to leave our conversation or our
Mm.
meetup or whatever it is in a better
Mm.
place and I'll be happy about it.
Well, I believe that energy is just infectious in any form, right? And
Yeah.
so my thought is that, maybe some of them are more powerful than others, and I honestly think, unfortunately, it seems like the negative energy is more powerful in ways. It's more infectious in ways, like a disease, like a virus. It's more
Yeah.
infectious than than happy positive energy. But happy positive energy, it can spread, and people do pick up on that energy depending on how receptive they are, right? And
Yeah.
so, like, people are different in the receptive levels. But it's, I guess you can talk about like empaths and different levels of receptivity, but you got to be really careful. Like the people that can be influenced by happy moods, they probably more likely to be influenced by negativity. And that's why we always talk about, who are you surrounding yourself with, what energy are you surrounding yourself with, what kind of people, frankly, are you surrounding yourself with, because it will impact you, whether it's subconscious or conscious. So you have to be really careful about that. And it's just on the bigger level, it's the same thing with your newsfeed. It's the same thing with what you're
Hmm.
listening to, what you're interacting with on social media, and it's a scary world as in regards to like getting online and again just letting it be. Um, it's almost as if you have to be extremely intentional, and if you go down that bad rabbit hole, I've done it before where I'm like, "I'm gonna do this with social media now," and then I'm like, "Oh, no, let me reverse that next day." Like, that was a bad idea.
I have
I don't like
started blocking and silencing and
that.
unfollowing
Yes,
when
yes.
somebody is too negative
Yeah.
or mean or nasty.
Don't need that. You don't. You
No.
don't. And it's so tempting. Like you can get baited, when people say things that are so outrageously, maybe in your opinion, wrong or immoral or, just negative or unnecessary or based in ignorance or what have you. And you can feel such a jolt, of
Yeah.
indignation, which I know I'm prone to, and that's why I can't, like, if I know people are gonna be going on, ridiculous racist rants or I'm just like, "Nope, I don't need that in my life," because I don't get paid to argue with you. Goodbye.
Right. And I think I'm almost better at it in person where I'm like, I'm not
Mhm.
having that conversation with you. Whereas
Mm,
if I'm reading the news, I'm like,
mm.
it's almost as though my intellectual curiosity is, why are people so fascinated with all this horrible stuff? Let me just keep reading. Maybe I'll find the answer why they want all this bad stuff in their world. It doesn't
Just,
work, let me tell you.
no, just tell yourself, "Oh, that's human nature. I'm glad I don't have that problem," and move on. Just
Yeah,
people
and
are
I think
struggling with it.
the past week, the one that really set me off was the whole a 50-year-old woman is past her
Ugh,
prime. I'm just like,
Jesus. First of
really?
all, who decided there was a prime? And also that language is
One.
steeped in childbearing bull crap.
Yep. Mhm.
And so and also, of course, defined by the men of the patriarchy that designed it, so and built
Right?
it, but I just can't.
I
It's just
can't
I
either.
just can't. I don't even I mean, and I really like I marvel at the people that subject themselves to all of this. I really do. Like I I think I just have to, like, give them respect to be like, "You know what you're getting into, and you're still doing it? That's okay, that's you."
I know, and I mean, I respect her decision to this. Not my not my kind of bailiwick
Not my
in her
politics.
viewpoint. However, I think it's great for all young women to see somebody out there doing it. And there should be
Yeah,
more women out there doing it, whether or not I agree with them or not, just so
yeah,
that people know
absolutely.
that women can occupy that space.
Yeah, but it is interesting, and one of the topic of men and how they're portrayed in general is interesting. I think it speaks to a larger thing of just like how people are kind of typecasted generally, right?
Hmm.
But in this specific example, I find it interesting because guess what? What serves the patriarchy better? stories and really, testimonies of men and women working well together for the lifting of equal rights and
Mm-hmm.
equity amongst women and
Mm-hmm.
men, or this dichotomy of men versus women, this story, this narrative of one against the other and who's winning, right? Because if you do that, then literally your gender just pits you against the other gender immediately, instantly,
Yeah.
by the sake of the framing of the situation, right? So again, for me, it's intentional and it's a little diabolical, and we have to be smart enough to look at this and say, I see what you're doing. I see what you're trying
Yeah.
to do. And we're not going to fall for that, right? And I love, the poem that you found because it just challenges, it stops for a second and says, no, we're not going to accept this. We're not going to accept that this is just the truth for everyone and that this is the truth in every situation. Here's my experience. I have a lot of great men in my life that are lifting me up, that are encouraging me, respect my opinions, seek out my opinions. Um, and that's one person's experience, and that experience counts.
Yeah.
And it speaks to other people's experiences. I think there was, thousands of shares or impressions or what have you on this thing. And I just think, oh, well, when I see that, that means that people, agree with this and probably relate to it in some way. And that's somewhat encouraging, right? Because whenever there's somebody villainizing any one group of people, that should be a little ding, little
I like this.
little bell
Yeah.
in your head that says maybe somebody's trying to manipulate me right now.
Mm-hmm. And
It's like
who
a
would
red
benefit
flag.
from that, right? Like,
Exactly.
I would guessing the status quo benefits from it.
Of course, because
Yep.
this they built the patriarchy. It took the hundreds of years, and they're not going to let it be dismantled quickly and swiftly and easily without a fight, right? And there's so many tools that have always been used. I mean, I don't know why it's just coming to my mind, and it probably has nothing to do with it, but it makes me think of the book title of, women are for Venus and men are for Mars or what have you, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, was that from the 70s or something? I don't know what that's even really about. But it's
I don't
such
know
a
either.
cultural yeah, I don't actually know. I know it was a book. I have no idea what the book was actually about. If it was good, if it was terrible, if it was, just sexist. I have no idea. Or maybe it was something good. I have no idea.
I
But
have no idea either.
whatever it was, all of us know that title and
We
people
do.
use it as a colloquial thing that
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not so much today, of course, but people used it for, what, decades? And we
They
still know what
did.
it is. Yeah.
They use that, and they use, oh well, boys will be boys. Just like
Mm. So
wrong on
many
both fronts, people.
so much justifying, rationalizing language, right? Of
Yep.
just, well, this is the way it is. So, and literally, it's just like, let's protect the status quo. This is the way that it
Mm-hmm.
is, and this is why it's that way, and
Mm-hmm.
you can't do anything about it. You might as well say that. That's what all of those things mean. Like, oh, women and men are
Yes.
just different. Well, boys are just going to do what they're going to do. Nothing we can do about it. Nothing we can change, right? Like, I mean, it's just so amazingly defeatist. It
It
just
is,
kills
and
me.
the one that always kills me the most because it impacts so many women is the like dress codes in school or what
Oh,
used to
don't
be
get
in
me
like
started on
law
dress
firms,
codes.
right? Like it's
Oh,
not it's not
or
about actually
courtrooms.
how
I feel like there's
or
still
courtrooms.
that's still a thing,
Hmm.
right? I
I
mean,
was
come
in front
on.
of a judge before who was
Mhm.
only it was skirts only or dresses only. There were no
Mm-mm.
pants.
Mm.
Hmm.
I can't. I just
I
can't.
can't
I
either.
know. It's just- and I mean, even that is interesting to me of like, is the environment you're putting yourself in oppressive? And if it
Yeah.
is, and you know it, like, what are you going to do about it? Is it worth it for you to stay there for some greater reason? Or do you remove yourself from it? Like for me, I'm trying never to walk into another courtroom again. That's my goal in life. It's just, unless
Same.
I'm like, collecting money. Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't need to be there. So, but I mean, that's one of the reasons why, it's so stuffy. It's so oppressive to me, literally. Like, and
Hmm.
I would wear the skirts and I can just feel my stomach being compressed. I just I hate it so
Yeah.
much. And I would feel literally almost sick because I was so nervous and I was just so constrained at the same
Mm-hmm.
time. I can hardly sit down. And I don't think anyone has any idea what women are going through in that space. I don't know how the men feel or anybody wearing suits or other attire, but I can tell you for me, it was terrible.
Well, I mean, I have to say, I do not know how men wear suits in summer in Austin. Like, it is
Yeah,
110
the
degrees
sweatiness.
with 80% humidity. How are you wearing a suit that's probably lined in some sort of polyester?
They
No
need to
matter how
make like
expensive your suit is.
they should be making suits that have like patches of absorption or something.
Right? Like, or what about all these high performance fabrics that are out there for like, you know,
Mhm. Yeah, all the
why aren't those
athletic
being
stuff.
used?
Mm.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think a
Like,
business is boiling.
I was also thinking when you were describing these things about like things that I did to myself younger in my
Mm.
career, like wearing
Mm.
high heels every day, which
Mhm.
I never necessarily, I always made sure I bought heels that were comfortable. But at the
Right.
same time, why did I
Flats are
do
more
that?
comfortable than
Or
heels.
that and if you're going to, as somebody who tends to trip, because,
Mm.
you know, I am not the most coordinated person in the world. You know, I wouldn't like to avoid breaking an ankle, and I think that
Yeah.
it would occur more frequently in heels. So I have like
Ugh.
let this go away to the side, and I'm not wearing heels every single day because I would like to not fall on my face. But the idea of so many women and so many business women thinking that is what needs to happen. And what really caught me was I read, I think some blogger who was a high power lawyer in New York City, and she decided that she was no longer going to appear before clients looking like she was there to do their taxes. Which, let's face it,
Mm.
if you're wearing a dark suit and just kind of like serious lawyer attire, you do kind of look like you're there to either be an undertaker or to do their
Audit
taxes.
somebody. No.
Right. Like, and I kind of take that to heart. Like, I think you could look professional without looking like you're the undertaker
Right.
or an
Right.
auditor.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. The color revolution.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or the idea that you
absolutely.
could wear shoes that were not, 3-inch heels with a
Mm,
pointed toe, right? Like,
yeah,
wow, there's a whole
yeah.
world of shoes out there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's about the open-mindedness of of the people that have power and control, though. That's what's interesting about it. And
Mhm.
so can you change it or do you have to leave it before I don't know, but I do appreciate people who have the freedom and space of doing things differently. It really inspires
Absolutely.
people. It's really crazy. It's just wild that like you can see somebody and be like, "Oh, I can do that too." Yeah, I mean, it's that simple. It's that simple sometimes.
I remember working in the Texas Capitol, and it was a time when pantsuits were like all the rage, right?
Mhm, mhm.
In the, early mid 2000s. And I remember people coming up to me saying, "Wow, you're not dressed like everybody else." And I'm like,
Mhm.
"Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
One, I'm not dressing for everybody else, I'm dressing for myself." But now,
Uh-huh.
that's kind of the norm, right? Like people, they're not in some sort of uniform. And I think
Right.
it
Right.
helps when there's examples of people who aren't always wearing a
That's
uniform.
progress.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. The conformity is never good in my mind.
No.
Maybe for some things we gotta come together and do something right now. Okay, but let's get towards the freedom and the
Right?
self-expression and self-comfort,
Like
self-service.
let me be your guide. Bring out the high heels if you want to go on a nice date with
Mhm.
yourself.
Mhm.
Otherwise, don't look like the auditor or the undertaker.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I wonder if everyone listening has taken the time to think about what they could wear if they could wear anything they want, right? Because and this is just one example of so many things, but literally it seems to me in my experience talking with lots of folks that it never occurs to people to do something different. It
It's
never
like they
even really
need
occurs to
permission,
them.
right?
Yeah, they need to give themselves permission, and that's what seeing somebody else doing something sometimes gives you permission do it yourself. And I mean, I definitely like use that over and over again in my life where it's not, it's about clothes, it's about, you know, career, it's about lifestyle, it's about traveling, it's about everything, finance and everything else. It's like literally if I see someone else doing it, I'm like, oh yeah, I can do it then. They're doing it. I can do it. And that helps me get past these limiting just things that I didn't even know were there sometimes.
And when you say it like that, it makes me think it's probably the same story for all the kind of oppressive, sad news that we see out there. Like, we need
Mm.
permission to seek out the other news.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We need a TMZ for good uplifting stories. Like, can we do can we do
Oh,
something
yeah.
that everybody will actually want to see? And I do see that there are people on the scene, you know, trying to do some of this, and I really appreciate that. You know, it's not easy to do something different, and you don't get the instant support, you know, that other people get, you know, from successful, you know, just clicks and ads and all of that. So I love that people are doing it, and maybe we work to uplift them in the work that they're doing, sharing positive ones,
Yeah.
or even the challenge that we talked about earlier of, you know, if you do send something off that's maybe really hard news to listen to or to see into the, you know, diaspora, maybe you are also finding something of an activation for people to also use, or even just a good story or something else to maybe not balance but to add to and enrich, you know,
Yeah.
and fill out the larger story that really surrounds it, because that's the human experience. You know, the human experience is not just bad, it is bad, and
Correct.
it's a lot of good. It's both and everything at the same time, right? And so anytime that we're getting just one thing, one dimensional things, first of all, like, ew, that's not fun.
Yeah.
It's not cute, you know, we need
No,
more. Give us
we
more.
do.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's also, I was thinking about how do we make like good news or good stories sensationalized? And I thought, why don't we hear about more people who stop their cars in the middle of the street and,
Mm.
chase down the dog or chase down the cat to get them out of the road for
Mhm.
safety,
Mm.
right?
Yes, yes,
Which
yes.
is kind of sensational, right? See the
Yeah,
woman running
oh,
through
when you see
traffic,
a
grabbing the
cute little
dog.
dog, oh yeah, put the dog on the front of it. People love that.
Yeah.
People love animals in general, especially cute ones. So why not? We can totally find sensational angles. I love that.
Yeah, and maybe it is that we're not talking about good stories in the kind of same way that we're talking about the bad stories. Like,
Mhm.
do we tend to sensationalize the bad stuff because it makes it, ooh, that much more interesting? But what if we chose to like sensationalize the good stuff?
We might have to make a news network, I guess. I don't know.
Wouldn't
Your
that be
local
awesome?
uplift.
Yeah. But then you can hear about how city council isn't, you know, raising the 10 cents sales tax
Mhm,
or whatever to
mhm.
for like the trauma on people's finances, but rather because they're saving puppies and helping old people, and this is their stories.
Mm,
That's a good point. Why aren't we talking about that?
I don't know. You know, I don't know. I find it interesting. Like even as you're talking about it, I would love for that to be real. And it seems like
Me too.
people seem to get stuck in the idea that like, well, we need to know the problems because we need to know what to solve and all of that. And I'm like, of course, like I'm totally with you. But we have so many channels for that. We have so many
Hmm.
outlets for that. It's like it is the thing. It's almost like Black History Month, where people are like, why do we need a Black History Month? And it's like, because all the other months are not about Black history. That's why. That's why we need it. It's ridiculous
Yeah,
that it's not there. And
yeah,
it's the same thing, or not the same thing, but it's a somewhat similar thing in that you could say, well, we have to be intentional because it doesn't already exist in the greater, you know, in the greater
yes.
schism of things. So, hmm. I like that, and I wonder if anyone's doing it too. That's the other thing is, you know, sometimes it's not reaching us, which is problematic.
Right.
Maybe it's about, you know, doing whatever we can to lift and amplify the people already doing some of this stuff, and maybe sharing it somehow. One idea that I had for our nonprofit work was, did you remember back in, I don't know, had to have been a few years ago already now, that they did something like a story corps. I don't know if it was NPR or something, but it was like they would set up like a phone booth all over the world or something to that effect. I can't remember all the details. And people would just go in the booth and essentially record an audio story of whatever in their life. Like, just, I think it was like just good things mostly. Maybe not. Maybe it was just real things. I don't know if it was supposed to be good or negative or anything else. It was just real stories. Like, this is my story. This is our love story, or this is my cancer story, or whatever it might be. People told their stories. And then it was an opportunity for people to hear real stories. And I was thinking, it would be wonderful to have kind of a story core for all of the local nonprofit work that's happening and how it's impacting local lives, because then it's coming from people in their perspective, and it's about them wanting to share their story. And it could be shared anonymously, it could be shared in a way that's not going to, I think that in the story core, I don't know if they identified people or not, but I mean, you could share all the stories anonymously and it wouldn't be an issue, right? It would just be about the story. And so
Yeah,
that's
like
just one thought that I had.
I love this idea because I think it's so interesting that you could get somebody's voice, you could do a
Mm-hmm.
cartoon image for that person, whether
Mm-hmm.
it resembled them or not,
Mm-hmm.
have them just mention their first name or whatever name they wanted to give.
Yeah.
And you bring home the story in a way that could be very positive, but also protective of the person who is sharing the information, be either
Yeah.
traumatic or personal or something that otherwise would not share because you've given them that safe place to do it. This is fantastic.
And it just flips the whole, dynamic, in
Yeah.
that a lot of times people who are telling the news, like you mentioned, they are telling the news. I'm doing air quotes in my room.
Okay, I'm glad everybody saw those your quotes.
They're telling the news through all of these talking points that are coming from, some corporate head of one of six, conglomerate type of global media companies or what have you. That really might not even have anything to do with the local stories, especially. That really pisses me off, I guess. And so, um, you know, the framing of the stories is one of the most important things, really, right? Because you can take any set of facts and you can probably make it what you want it to be about. I mean, as attorneys, we're basically trained in this. We're
Yes.
basically trained to be able to frame things, in our client's favor. And I always find that lesson very interesting. Like, I apply it to so many things in my life where I'm just like, you could make this anything. Like, you could you could frame it in a different way. And so my point being is that um when you let people, or not let people, but you create a platform or co-create a platform for people to tell their own stories, it's got to be so much more powerful, right? Because you're getting it straight
Yeah.
from that person. Not to say that you might, interpret it perfectly the way that they would have you interpret it, but just the fact that you're hearing it directly from them, the way that they would phrase it, the way that they would describe it, the way that they interpret what happened to them, um, that gives a whole other power dynamic, and a whole other level of insight that you wouldn't get otherwise from a third party storyteller.
I love this. I love the idea of finding more ways to get people's stories out there.
Yeah.
And of course, stories that help people get uplifted as well. Even if those are stories about bad things that happen to them, I'm sure they have what they would have rather had seen happen, or lessons that people could take away so that they can find an uplift in every story. Because as you have mentioned, we are trained as lawyers, and fully believe that there is something to be taken as an uplift from every single story, no matter how crappy they are.
Mm. Hmm. That's a great
Just
perspective too. And that, I mean, that might be part of it, honestly. I used to watch this other, uh, I think, independent news organization, and they always had, I thought, something interesting to say. But one day, I think it was probably honestly like just, you know, what I consider our work together. working to make our lives more just positive and optimistic, really, and intentionally optimistic in ways that I really took a look at it and thought, no matter what happens in the world, they always find something negative to say. And even though, like, my intellectual side of me, like, kind of is obsessed with it, or I'm just like, "Yes, let's tear this story apart," it's fun for me in ways where I'm like, I love this, like, exercise of my brain, of my intellect, of, like, how can I be critical here, right? Like, it's a good fun exercise for me to have, like, this critical thought. But what I realized, especially because it was, like, maybe all I was watching at the time, or it felt like that anyways, I was like, "This is a lot of negative." Just like even things like they would tell a story, like, "Here's the news story." They would start off with the news story, and then I'd be like, "Oh, that's not bad," and then they would be like, "This is terrible, and these are the reasons why," and I'm like, "Well, even if I agreed with them, I'm just like, wow, it's just really, like, really strong on the negativity, and no room for anything else, and so, I don't like that, and, I mean, even when I did like it, I realized it wasn't that good for me, and it might have a lot to do with, the teller, the lens that it's coming through, and so that's why I love the idea of it coming straight from people and their experiences, but I wonder if there's also, like, I don't know. I wonder if there's a place where I wouldn't say that you want it to be always just like the person looking for the silver lining, but wouldn't it be nice to have like both? where, so, where you really have like somebody that intends to look for, the place to critique and somebody who tends to look for like the good in a story or
Yeah.
the saving grace. I mean, it would just be again, it's just more about having like a fuller, more robust, richer experience versus like this single dimension type of thing.
Like, wouldn't it be nice if social media comments you could choose to either like, I want to attack, I want to
Mm.
support,
Mhm.
or whatever
Mhm.
the tags need to be, right? So that you know that, hey, this person, let's take a example from the real world, the horrendous and horrific earthquakes that have been occurring in Turkey. Obviously, horrible, lots of death, horrible, horrible situation for this country. But at the same time, that world kitchen from Jose Andres has gotten in there so fast, and all
Mm.
these chefs are able to, they know how to feed people, and they are there almost immediately feeding people.
Yeah.
And
That's
I think of
beautiful. That's
it,
humanity right
it
there.
is, and think of how
Yeah.
long when governments were doing it, it took them to get organized and get it
Mm.
all up and running. And this is just like
Exactly.
within a few hours,
Exactly.
they're up and running.
Yes.
And I think that's a
And
good story that comes out of it.
absolutely, and I mean, just knowing that that exists and that people are doing it and doing it well and making a difference, I
Hmm.
know that that has to inspire people. Like, it just has to inspire people to get involved in some way. And that's the part that really sticks out to me is that, when you give people just bad, terrible, depressing, tragic news and then you don't give them any hope, that then you leave them just in that state of depression and that's I really believe it has a lot to do with the state of our current, mental health crisis in this country of just and probably the world.
Yeah.
Of just people they're isolated to begin with. They're literally sitting alone in front of a TV box that is giving
Hmm.
them this terrible, terrible outlook of the world and leaving them with nothing, no hope, nothing. Like, I don't know.
Day
I don't
after
think that
day, too.
day after day, hour after hour, the 24-hour news cycle, right? And for me, humanity has gotten through all the things in history. You could just, think about the things in history, like we're still alive. I don't know that whether or not we've improved things or not, we've gotten through them, we survived them at the very least, or, the people who survived. In what state? I can't say, but I can say that there's a bunch of examples, so many examples of people helping one another, of people showing their
Hmm.
humanity, of people showing love for one another, for strangers, right? For
Hmm.
people sacrificing to save someone else or to help someone else or to lend someone else a helping hand. And those are the bits that make me feel like hopeful, like literally hopeful. Like I could just knowing the things I know. This happened to me last night. I was talking to someone about this and thinking like I can't even think about all the things going on in the world because I will spiral into how terrible things are, and it can go really fast because I feel like I know too much at times, or I'm like, I don't even
Yeah.
know why I know these
Hmm.
things. And I don't know of all the good things that are happening, or how I can have any impact. And, to be fair, you can find those things. It's not that they're not available. It's just that it's just like I said before, where the things that are easy to access and the things that are bombarding you are the hard things, are the scary things, the depressing things, the triggering things, the sad things, um, the negative things. And finding the hope is so much harder. You have to be
It
intentional and focused
is.
and researched, and you have to have time and the resources and availability. Like it's so much harder. And for all the people who are just trying, I'd like to say, are in the struggle, or just trying to survive in their daily lives, they might have definitely time to absorb all of these things floating around in the air because they're there. They might not have the time and resources and availability to just do something that's intentional, focused, research based, and then action based. That takes a lot. It takes so much. And so just like in our work with health, care organizations in particular, and other organizations that are for the public good, my saying is like, it's on us. That's what I'm like, it's not, we shouldn't be leaving this to the people who need the services. We shouldn't be leaving it to them for them to come to us and to find us and to get us to give them the things, right? Like that's not, it's on us. This is our job. And that's my same thought for, the news industry, the storytellers, the social media posters, the influencers. It shouldn't be on your viewers, right, to go and spend hours of research trying to correct what you said, or not even correct, but fill out the rest of that story, or find the good things to add to your story. That should be on the storytellers.
Yeah.
They should really be taking that responsibility and owning it.
And I think as consumers, it's on us to pass right on by the negative and keep
Hmm.
going until we find the positive. Because I think they are out there. We just
Oh
have
yeah.
to like sift through the
Yeah.
mountain
Yes.
of,
Yes.
you
But
know,
But there are people
crap.
with power in these spaces, and even
Hmm.
people who don't think that they have a lot of power, like those people who are working for, one of the major companies, but they get screen time, or they have some influence on which stories are told, or they might be able to add a little 5-second bit about, the local nonprofit and what they're doing, or what have you. Like there is power. I know that, in my anti-racism trainings, that was one of the most powerful things that I took from it, is that people don't realize how much power they have. They don't realize that they're gatekeepers. Like every person has some gatekeeping, usually, that they have influence, is really what it is, on something, right? They have influence on how somebody accesses something that they have. And if we all just reflected on that, and really, were intent, took some intentionality into that, brought some intentionality into that, into our work, and what we actually want to do with that gatekeeping power, it can actually have some really powerful impacts, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I don't think that we should be dissuaded by people who tell us not to bring out
Hmm.
the good stories and uplift the good stories and uplift people, because that's a them issue, right? The
Yeah.
reasons that they want all the negativity, that's a them issue. It doesn't need to be an our issue.
Right. And I would argue too that, like, you were talking earlier about, is there not money in good stories? Is there not money there? And I would argue, and I mean, maybe it's something, that needs to be supported in some other ways beyond my initial thoughts on it, of course. But I would argue, you know, you could probably build a stronger base of people coming back to you when they're not being, left in complete despair and depression from your work. So,
Right? You know, it's
so
like that.
maybe.
I read this past week that it was some really high number, like 70% of consumers prefer to buy brands that are
Mm-hmm. Like
like-minded
socially,
to
mm-hmm,
and socially conscious
conscious
brands.
or yeah, yeah.
And it's kind of like that when it comes to news too, right? Like, I think
Mm-hmm.
you are absolutely correct that people want it, but it's not there or it's not readily accessible. And I guess it is on us to hunt it down or lift it up when we see it or
Mm-hmm.
find ways to sensation
Mm-hmm.
to
Or
make
find
it.
ways to integrate it into the work you're
Yeah.
already doing if you are one of the people who has that power. Yeah.
And it reminds me to like bring it back to something you said at the very beginning, which is you gave advice that is essentially create the world that you want to live in.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's on us. If we're wanting to uplift it,
Mm.
we need to create the world that we want to live in by, you know, sharing that uplifting
Yeah.
messages
Yeah.
and uplifting news and uplifting segments within perhaps crappy news. Not in a way of, say, I'm not big on directly criticizing the bearers of the bad news, but more in a let's drown their voices out with the
Mm-hmm.
good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But
or let's just
that's a
make
me
an
style.
alternative, right? Where
Yeah.
people have a place to go for safe refuge. Like
Mm,
just not, and it's not about being safe in a sense of you don't drown out the real world, if some might say, or the hard stuff that's happening out there. It's really about embracing the full story.
yes.
Because everywhere
Absolutely.
that something bad is happening, I guarantee you there's somebody fighting it. There's somebody trying to do something about
Hmm.
it. Like that's the nature of humanity, and that's what gives me hope in humanity, and that's what keeps me optimistic because we have faced the worst things, right? I mean, there's
Yeah.
the worst things you can
Yes.
imagine. We have faced them as humanity. And it seems to me that for the most part, humans always show up. They always show up in one way or another. And it's a matter of whether or not their stories were really told in a way that survived history, or,
Survive the day or the news
survived the
cycle.
day. Or in a way where they were able to tell the stories, if they weren't the victors. Sometimes we
Hmm.
think of who gets to tell the stories, but we're in
Hmm.
a very, very unique and powerful situation right now in time where we all get to be storytellers, actually, if we want to
Yeah.
be. And that's
That's pretty
that's
cool.
unique. Yeah, it's pretty
Hmm.
cool. And so it's a matter of who cuts through the clutter and the noise. That's the
Hmm.
challenge of today. And so for all of us, involved in the uplift community in general, and everyone else that we touch in our lives, I mean, basically we have to, just start a little movement. That's all.
That's
Of
all.
everyone uplifting the good in humanity. That's all.
And for everyone out there, like, I highly recommend finding yourself a Cy because she, they have found a way to like really bring out and make me comfortable in my own skin. And I think I've always thought this way, but I've been very like,
Oh.
and if so for so many years, it was not, I would say, not socially acceptable to be the person who like saw the sunny side. That just
Mhm.
meant you were like a rube or naive or dumb, and kind people were just
We're
ignorant.
not
Like,
dumb. We are smart as
no,
hell, and
that's
we are
right.
motivated and successful, and we are so,
Yes.
so capable, and we're doing things, and all those people are wrong. I mean, as you're saying that, I'm almost crying, but and I didn't mean to cut you off because I love what you're saying, but I just wanted to share, like, in this moment, like, I cannot count the number of times I was called naive. I just can't, like,
Mhm. Mhm.
even count.
Mhm.
So we're all in
Well,
it together. We're sharing that experience, and we can all be that person for one another. You're definitely that person for me. So thank you, Tessa,
aw.
and thank you everyone for being part of this uplift community. It is the thing that's going to, help us get closer to the world that we really want.
Yes, I cannot say enough. And if you need it and you need the help, you need an
Mhm.
ear, just get in touch with us. We're on social, or you can find us with our information because we want this community to be strong and happy and loud and to drown out the voices of everyone else.
Absolutely. Stay uplifted, y'all. Thank you, Tessa.
Thanks.